It's rightfully mine, you know. You never appreciated what Dad left you. The words, delivered with a casual, almost dismissive wave of his hand, hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My birthday, the one I'd planned for months, the one I'd looked forward to as a small, quiet celebration with the few people who mattered, had just imploded. My brother, Liam, stood there, smirking, the smugness radiating off him like a heat wave. He wasn't even looking at me, his gaze fixed on the sleek, leather-bound journal lying open on the coffee table. The journal contained Dad's final wishes, meticulously detailed, outlining the distribution of his modest estate. And Liam, in his infinite wisdom and entitlement, had apparently decided he knew better. My life had always been a study in contrasts, a delicate balancing act between the quiet stability I craved and the constant, low-grade hum of family dysfunction. For years, I'd been the responsible one, the one who held things together, the one who smoothed over Liam's impulsive decisions and smoothed Liam's ruffled feathers. My apartment was small, tidy, filled with books and plants, a sanctuary from the storm that was my family. Liam, on the other hand, lived a life of perpetual motion, always chasing the next big thing, always leaving a trail of half-finished projects and bewildered creditors. He'd always been like that, charming and careless, a whirlwind that swept through life, leaving others to clean up the mess. I remembered one particular incident from years ago, before Dad passed. Liam had been in a bit of a bind, as usual. He'd borrowed a significant sum from me, promising to pay it back with interest once his latest sure-thing investment panned out. He'd sworn on Dad's name, his eyes wide and sincere. I'd given him the money, a large chunk of my savings, with a knot of unease in my stomach. Weeks turned into months. His investment, predictably, evaporated. When I finally broached the subject, his response was a theatrical sigh. "Oh, that? Don't worry about it. Your family. I'll get you back when I can." The implicit message was clear, my needs were secondary to his, my financial well-being a small price to pay for his fleeting comfort. The money never came back. Then there was the time Liam decided he needed a new car. Not just any car, but a ridiculously expensive model that was far beyond his means. He convinced me to co-sign the loan, painting a picture of how it would help him in his professional image. He'd assured me he had a solid plan to cover the payments. Of course, within 6 months, the payments became sporadic, then stopped altogether. The collection agencies started calling, their persistent ring a constant source of anxiety. I ended up having to sell a small piece of land inherited from my grandmother to cover Liam's debt and salvage my own credit. He offered a half-hearted apology, muttered something about tough times, and then promptly went on a lavish vacation he'd somehow managed to fund. Each instant chipped away at my patience, my trust, and my sense of fairness. I learned to tread carefully around Liam, to anticipate his needs before he voiced them, and to guard my own resources with a silent vigilance. The journal sat on the coffee table, a testament to Dad's quiet fairness. He knew Liam. He knew Liam's tendency to take without asking, to assume without earning. So, he'd laid it all out, clear as day. The house, their childhood home, was to be split, 50-50, with me managing the sale and Liam receiving his share in cash after expenses. My small savings, painstakingly accumulated over years of careful budgeting, were to remain mine. And the antique furniture, the items Dad cherished, were to be divided according to specific wishes he'd noted in the journal. It was equitable, it was just, and it was everything I needed to finally feel a sense of peace. My birthday had started beautifully. My small apartment was filled with the scent of freshly baked cake and the soft glow of fairy lights. My closest friends were here, their laughter a comforting melody. Liam had arrived late, of course, a whirlwind of apologies and exaggerated charm. He'd brought a wilting bouquet of flowers and a sheepish grin, the usual preamble to some request or confession. I'd accepted his presence, though a tiny prickle of apprehension lingered. I'd shown him the journal earlier, explaining the terms, and he'd nodded along, seemingly agreeing. But now, he was standing there, his gaze fixed on the open pages, his expression shifting from feigned nonchalance to something colder, more avaricious. My breath hitched. My friends, sensing the shift in atmosphere, had quieted, their smiles fading. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Liam finally looked at me, his eyes glinting. I said, he repeated, enunciating each word with infuriating clarity, that this is rightfully mine. Dad always favored me. He knew I could do more with it. This hoe. It's wasted on you in this little shoebox. And these antiques? I'll sell them. Get a good price. You wouldn't know what to do with them anyway. The air crackled with unspoken tension. My friends stared, their faces a mixture of shock and confusion. The birthday cake, once a symbol of celebration, now seemed to mock me with its cheerful frosting. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the distant hum of city traffic. Liam, oblivious or perhaps reveling in the chaos he'd created, continued, he probably meant for me to have the lion's share. You're always so sensible, so. He wouldn't want his legacy to go to someone who just hoards it in books and plants. My mind raced, trying to process the sheer audacity, the blatant theft of not just my inheritance, but my trust, my birthday, my peace. He hadn't just crossed a line, he'd obliterated it. He'd taken a sacred moment, a tangible link to our father, and twisted it into a tool for his own selfish gain. The feeling of betrayal was visceral, a cold wave washing over me, leaving me breathless. I looked at Liam, at his self-satisfied smirk, and a quiet, chilling resolve began to form. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. The shock had done its work, calcifying something inside me, turning my hurt into a sharp, clean edge. I simply stood there, a small, tight smile playing on my lips. Is that so? I said, my voice unnervingly calm. Liam scoffed, yes, it is. So, hand over the journal. We'll get a proper lawyer. One who understands how these things be done. He extended a hand, palm up, expecting me to hand him the very document he was trying to usurp. I picked up the journal, not with a flourish, but with a deliberate slowness. The leather felt cool and familiar in my hands. I didn't look at Liam. I looked at my friends, their faces etched with concern. Then, I turned back to Liam. You see, I began, my voice still quiet, but with an undertone of steel that made him pause, his hand hovering in midair. Dad wasn't just sensible. He was also very, very thorough. And he was wise enough to anticipate certain predicaments. I walked over to the small side table where my laptop sat. Liam watched me, his smugness beginning to falter, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. I opened the laptop, my fingers moving with a precision honed by years of dealing with Liam's chaos. He knew, I continued, my voice gaining a quiet rhythm, that you might try something like this. So, he included a few contingencies. I navigated through folders, bypassing the cheerful birthday photos, and opened a secure document. I didn't read it aloud. I didn't need to. I simply turned the laptop so Liam could see the screen. It was a copy of a notarized affidavit, signed by Dad just weeks before he passed. In it, he explicitly stated that should I, his daughter, ever find myself in a dispute with Liam regarding the inheritance, and should Liam be found to have acted in bad faith or attempted to defraud me of my rightful share, then the entirety of the estate, including the house and all its contents, would be legally transferred to me. The affidavit also detailed a clause that stipulated Liam would be responsible for any legal fees incurred by me in the defense of my inheritance. Liam's face, which had been a picture of arrogant entitlement, drained of all color. His mouth fell open. The smirk vanished, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief, then raw panic. He stumbled back a step, his eyes darting between the screen and my impassive face. What is that?" he stammered, his voice suddenly thin. "That, Liam," I said, closing the laptop with a soft click, the sound echoing in the sudden, absolute silence of the room, "is Dad's way of ensuring justice. It seems he understood you better than I gave him credit for. And I, it appears, have learned from his example." I walked back to the coffee table and picked up the original journal. I didn't hand it to him. I didn't say another word to him. I simply placed it back on its stand, a silent monument to his failure. The aftermath was swift and brutal, though not in the way Liam might have imagined. The initial shock of seeing the affidavit turned into frantic, impotent rage. He started calling, then texting, his messages escalating from bewildered questions to increasingly desperate demands. He tried to rally our mother, a woman who had always been fiercely protective of Liam, painting me as some kind of vindictive shrew. "Your daughter is trying to cheat your son," his text shrieked. "She's always been jealous. She's trying to steal what's rightfully mine." But my mother, for all her favoritism towards Liam, was also a pragmatist. I had sent her a discreet email with a scan of the affidavit and a brief, factual explanation of Liam's attempted fraud. She didn't call. She didn't text me back. But the barrage of messages from Liam to her, which he'd foolishly forwarded to me in a fit of misguided anger, showed a distinct lack of eternal support. I saw his desperate pleas met with clipped, one-word replies. My friends, initially stunned into silence, rallied around me with a quiet solidarity. They helped me clean up, their presence a comforting balm. They didn't pry, they didn't offer unsolicited advice. They just were. Liam, however, was a lost cause. He'd burned too many bridges, alienated too many people with his constant schemes and broken promises. He tried to get other family members involved, spinning tales of my cruelty. But the few who were sensible enough to listen were aware of Liam's history. The whispers started. His reputation, already tarnished, became a byword for desperation. The legal process, thankfully, was anticlimactic. Armed with the affidavit, my lawyer had Liam's attempts to contest the will dismissed with extreme prejudice. The sale of the house proceeded, the antique furniture catalogued and accounted for. Liam received his very modest share, which he promptly blew through in a matter of weeks on yet another ill-conceived venture. The social consequence, however, was the real prize. He was ostracized, his name no longer uttered with the same casual affection. He became a cautionary tale, a ghost at family gatherings, his presence a reminder of what happens when entitlement blinds you to reality. On my birthday, after Liam's departure, my friends and I had a quiet moment. We ate cake, we talked, and we reminisced about Dad. There were no grand pronouncements, no triumphant cheers. Just a shared sense of peace, a quiet restoration of order. I hadn't sought revenge, I had simply asserted what was rightfully mine, protected by foresight and a father's love. The emotional justice wasn't in Liam's suffering, but in the silent, irrefutable proof that his manipulation had finally failed, and that true worth, as Dad had taught me, lay not in taking, but in integrity. The national news never actually came, of course. This was a quiet victory, a deeply personal one. And that, in its own way, was far more satisfying.